Welcome back to Court TV Live. The breaking news at this hour is that the United States of America has rested its case against Sean Diddy Combs.
That's right. We have been in 7 weeks of trial there in New York City in the sex trafficking trial. And we understand that now that the case is passing to the defense, they are not expected to put on any witnesses. Let's get a live update with this breaking news from out on the ground there in front of the federal courthouse. Court TV's legal correspondent Kelly Craft is there. Kelly, what is the latest? What did the prosecution end their case in chief on?
Well, hey there, Julia and Ted. A lot of movement out here in Lower Manhattan because, as you just mentioned, the prosecution has just arrested its case in chief in the sex trafficking trial against Sean Diddy Combs. So we are on a lunch break. Yet the defense counsel is making a motion for a judgment of acquittal. So that's taking place as we speak. Defense counsel arguing in front of the judge that there is not sufficient evidence to even hand this case over to the jury. So that argument is taking place now. No ruling on that yet, of course, from the judge, because those arguments are just beginning. So what was taking place today, defense counsel still was cross-examining the special agent from the Department of Homeland Security. This was Joseph Cerciello. And then the redirect took place. It was very, very short. And what they were saying on redirect was this was not expected to be a comprehensive spreadsheet to dictate and to put forth all of the information every single hotel night. And so the special agent really couldn't answer that because the prosecution is really the one that put together these spreadsheets, and Cerciello was just up there to kind of verify the information and review it. He was really used by both the prosecution as well as the defense team to get out several text messages between Jane, the witness who went by the name of Jane, and her exchanges with male escorts, her exchanges with Sean Diddy Combs, and he was also used for the prosecution as well as the defense to put out some more of those sex videos, those hotel nights. So how defense counsel ended its cross-examination is by showing some more of those sex videos to the jury. Also talking about how there was some information that was excluded showing that Sean Combs paid for some of these hotel stays and a lot of these travel arrangements out of his personal account. Then on redirect, what they talked about is, okay, so again, this wasn't a comprehensive list. And one of the main things they ended with was asking, do the records show that Sean Combs paid to transport women across state lines? So that's exactly how the federal prosecutors, ended their case, and then they rested for the day. So, of course, we're going to keep you updated to see what the judge decides in this case. As we all know here at Court TV, it's usually unlikely that these motions by defense counsel are granted in regard for a calling for a judgment of acquittal. I would assume that the judge is going to let this case proceed. Defense counsel has indicated that it will start as well as end its case today. So just going to be reading into the record some evidence, especially a text message that Cassie Ventura, this was ruled on this morning, especially a text message that was ruled on by Cassie that was in regard to Cassie Ventura, in which she's saying she wanted to continue with some hotel nights, even though Sean Diddy Combs was saying to her, you need some rest.
Kelly, interested, I'm sure that now that the government is finished and the state is not going to put on Sean Combs or really a witness-based defense. Are you feeling the now shifting of the energy? Usually at the beginning of a big trial like this, everybody's there from around the world, and then it sort of levels off a hair. I'm assuming you're getting ready for the ramp up here starting Thursday with those closing arguments.
Absolutely, the ramp up is happening, and you can just even feel it this week because, of course, next week is a major holiday, the 4th of July. And so there was a lot of talk, even as this case was going and getting underway. Will we be done by the 4th of July holiday? And everyone talks about it inside when we're inside that federal courthouse that's right behind me there. The security officers, the police officers, attorneys, everyone is talking about it. Will we be done? And so the idea is that Thursday, the closing arguments will take place. That is the plan. 4 hours each, so going to be long, and then possibly we'll go into Friday as well. Then we'll have that weekend break. So then we'd be back next week, most likely. I mean, of course, this is a moving target, if you will, because things could end sooner than next week. But that's kind of the timing so far, Ted. But yes, everyone is ramping up, of course, because the verdict in this case, everyone wants to find out what it's going to be.
Kelly, you've been there for so many weeks of this trial, and we all know that the defense does not have to put on a case. It's the prosecution that has the burden to prove this beyond a reasonable doubt. But based on what you saw throughout the trial, are you surprised that they are not going to put even one single witness on the stand in front of this jury?
Well, there's two ways to look at it, Julia. One, maybe defense counsel wanted to put on some witnesses, but when they strategized and discussed the case, maybe they couldn't find anyone that actually was going to be beneficial to their case. Moreover, they really cross-examined the witnesses. They spent more time cross-examining some of the witnesses than the federal prosecutor spent on their own witnesses. So from a defense counsel strategy, you can always look at it like, well, we kind of did put on our case because we were cross-examining the witnesses and we got out so much doubt. This would be their idea. We got out so much doubt when we were cross-examining these witnesses that we don't even need to put on a case. But when things got going in the beginning of this trial, Julia, we did think that the defense counsel was going to be putting on an extensive case because they had talked about it, having an extensive witness list. But then as things got going and they cross-examined several of the witnesses, trying to get out there that there was no force, there was no coercion, there was no fraud, that these women were willing participants. That's, of course, what the cross-examination was all about when they cross-examined Cassie Ventura, who, of course, was the government's star witness in this case. And then we also heard from Mia and Jane, the three women that federal prosecutors talked about in the beginning of this case that are the victims.
Kelly, Sean Combs was disciplined by the judge at one point during the trial for making eye contact and doing a head nod to jurors as they walked in. We haven't heard anything else since then. I'm assuming that his behavior changed after the threat to kick him out of the courtroom?
You know, in regard, Ted, to him looking over at the jury, absolutely, because he was warned, a stern warning by the judge that he would be kicked out of his own trial, that if he saw him doing such behavior again. But that had taken place a few times. The judge admonished him for that, admonished the defense counsel for that as well. So no movements like that from Sean Diddy Combs. But still, what we've seen from inside the courtroom is Sean Combs very actively involved in his case. He writes down those notes on sticky pads. And one of the things that I always found interesting, you know, he really kind of slams down those sticky notes right in front of him. So the lawyers, he has an extensive team here, know that he has something that he wants out there for them to kind of communicate about and then maybe ask on cross-examination.
Wow, another involved defendant. Kelly Craft, thank you for the latest. I know we'll be checking in with you to see what happens today, as we could also see the defense resting their case. Let's turn our attention to our guest who is standing by, listening to this breaking news. Criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Marie Pereira. Marie, what do you think about the prosecution's case? So far, what you've heard, do you think they have proven their case beyond a reasonable doubt?
You know what? It could go 50-50 in this situation. I think this case is resting on consent, and consent is a very complicated situation. Consent could be given and it could be canceled. So the fact that sometimes the main witnesses, Cassie and Jane, said there was consent via text and they can't really deny it, it doesn't mean that at one point they didn't feel afraid. I think the video demonizes Sean Combs, and it shows what could happen if they didn't consent. Consent via coercion is not consent at all. So I think defense needs to be really careful in saying, oh, we cross-examined them to death, like Kelly said, and there were text messages saying, let's plan the hotel nights and let's plan the freak-offs. Maybe yes, but if the jury believes those few instances where there was violence allegedly given to them to make that consent, then it's a problem. It cancels the consent. And if without consent, this could be trafficking. You can't get it by saying, I'm going to show the videotapes, I'm going to punch you in your face, I'm going to hold broken glass against you. And people came in to testify. It wasn't just the women saying, I got beat up. There were people there, the personal assistants on the plane with Cassie, who just sat there and said nothing. So a jury could say, hey, I feel like there was no consent because he told Jane, drink this Molly and go out there and have all types of sex with Anton that night. It could go either way. It really could.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating then. You know, it's a lot like the Al Capone scenario where they got him on tax evasion. And it's... That video went out, and I think that prosecutors around this country and people around the country said, what? How is that guy walking free after watching that video? And the federal government came in because the state was past the statute of limitations and didn't have the cojones, I guess.
Wherewithal.
Yeah, to go for it. But here we are, and I think Marie's right on. This could go either way. It is a fascinating case, for sure. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see.
I can't believe that we're going to hear the defense resting as well in the closing arguments tomorrow. So stay with Court TV. We will keep you updated on what happens there in New York. Marie Pereira, thank you for your analysis.